And so for you, like, what was the inception story besides all the stuff that you just explained? Like the kind of like the moment where you realize, oh, I've proven out this framework, because I'm sure you typed it and tested it out in your day to day. Like, what was like the moment where you're like, okay, this is working pretty consistently?
The benefits were immediate. Even the reason that this all started is because the CNN election results project worked. It was a success. It was a success against a lot of odds. And I was asked to speak about that and say, what made this a success? And so then I had to reflect and think, oh, what are and I had these 5 things that I mentioned. I called the talk the simplicity imperative. And those things, I was immediately rolling in to everything that I did. One of them was prioritization, just thinking about, okay, what are the attributes that need to be on this page? What are the things that need to be on this page? Before we start getting into design, let's just figure out like what is high priority and what is low priority. Can we just do that? Because I want to keep that prioritization consistent as a thing shows up across various contexts. So with CNN, it could be a candidate. Okay. So if I say first name and last name is the most important and probably party is most important, that prioritization should likely change as a candidate shows up in various contexts. If I do want to change that prioritization for context, then I want to be really intentional about it. So things like that, things like reduce the number of moving parts. These have changed. These have evolved into this language that we use in OUX where we talk about shapeshifters and masked objects. So a masked object is 2 different objects that are wearing the exact same outfit. You see this in cards, the homepage card, and anything can go in the homepage card. And what you end up having, going back to this idea behind OUX that people think in objects, and when they go into an environment, whether that's digital or physical, they need to be able to recognize the objects. And if 2 objects that are very different look exactly the same, which we do in the digital world all the time, it's going to be confusing. This would be confusing in the real world, and it's confusing in the digital world. And then we have the flip side of our shapeshifters, where we have the same object that completely arbitrarily changes shape and attribute prioritization as it shows up in the 25 different places across product. This is also confusing. It's confusing when something changes shape arbitrarily. It's confusing in the real world. It's confusing in the digital world too. So like, I didn't have names for those back then, but I was immediately starting to try to avoid those shapeshifters and those masked objects. We also talk about isolated objects where 2 things are connected through the mental model. 2 things are connected in just truth of the world, and yet they are not connected in the digital world. Sandra Eby just did a great article. I just posted it on LinkedIn, and she was basically analyzing the Denver Zoo's website for all of these shapeshifters, masked objects. We also have broken objects and isolated objects. And I loved her example of isolated objects. So to give just an example of kind of the thinking behind OUX, I'll use the Denver Zoo because it's a great example. So really any zoo has animals, penguins being an instance of an animal, lions being an instance of an animal. And we've got some instances, penguins, lions, tigers, bears. Enclosures. So we call them habitats. So habitats would be probably different than the animal because you could have multiple habitats potentially for a single animal. All right. You could also have demos. So demos are events. This is where we're going to feed the pangolin or something like that, or feed the lion. That's going to be fun. So we have demos that happen throughout the day that have times on them. You could even have multiple demos. Demos are usually based around an animal and usually at a habitat. Sometimes not, but usually at a habitat. All these things they're just connected. They're connected in the real world and they have cardinality. And it's just true. So our job, one of our first jobs in the OUX world is figure out what are the things and how do they connect and what is the cardinality of them connecting. So I can say an animal has one-to-many habitats. I might even say an animal usually just has 1 habitat, but often they can have up to 3 habitats. So an animal has one-to-many habitats. A demo happens at a habitat or at 0-to-1 habitats. Maybe sometimes it's like at the visitor center or something like that, and it's not at a habitat. So a demo has 1, maybe it's always 1. A demo has 1 animal, but maybe like the bird show or something. a demo might have multiple animals. So these are the questions that I actually want to ask my client, because this is going to go straight into the design of literally the demo detail page. Can a demo have one? It has one animal. Can it have 0 animals? Can a demo just be like the fossil show or something like that? So there's actually no animals in the demo. Should we actually call this an event? Is an event a better word? So these have cardinality. They have connections. It's just true. And then you go to the Denver Zoo website. Anybody could go right now to the Denver Zoo website, and you'll go to the animal detail page, and it's not connected to demos, and it is not connected to habitats. None of these things are actually connected. They're all completely isolated from each other.